I had a chance to listen to the Josh Brown police interview with Colleyville Police Detective Nick Garcia. This was exclusively given to the Roy's Report by Jonathan and Susie Lamb. I previously reported on the other interviews that were done with both Jonathan Weiss, Rebecca Weiss, and Joni's cleaning lady, Sylvia. So this was the final interview that was released in what was a Freedom of Information request that was issued by Jonathan and Susie, being the parents here of little Lamb. You know, they had every right to gain access to this and see what was discussed during the interviews. This one with Josh was much longer than the one with Sylvia. It was about an hour and 17 minutes total. And he also had with him his attorney, Mark Daniel, which I will say, he did most of the talking, really the questioning during this entire process. Yeah, Detective Garcia would chime in and, add in some things here and there. But man, most of this thing was handled by the attorney, just sort of setting the stage and attempting to control the narrative. Here's because I listened to this, my initial thoughts on this. If you are somebody who is coming into this story, let's say you haven't heard anything about Daystar in the last year now, and you are listening to Josh Brown give his side of the story, he did what I thought was a masterful job, a masterful performance of controlling the narrative and getting people to feel sorry for him, making it seem like he is the victim here. Now, for you and I, we've been talking about this for a year. We know better, right? Too many things in this story. For me, in my opinion, they side in favor of Jonathan and Susie. They just do. It's just my opinion. And we're going to talk about a lot of it here in just a minute. But again, if you are somebody who's coming into this brand new, he was really convincing. I tried to look at it as from an outside perspective. If I were to come in new to this and listen to him, I would think, man, you know what? Man, this narrative, this Jonathan Lamb guy, wow, he's just bitter. It's all about a job. That's what Josh said during the interview. It was all about a job. Jonathan upset over the fact that he wasn't going to be the president of Daystar. So he attempts to make his own brother-in-law the villain in this and ruin his life. It was very convincing. Very convincing. If I'm looking at it from that sort of a perspective as somebody who might be coming in new to this. But I'm not coming in new to this. I've been covering this since the very beginning. Many of you found my platform from my coverage of this story. So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to hit on, all the big points. I'm not going to unpack all 1 hour and 17 minutes of it. You guys can watch the full thing for yourselves on the Roy's Report. They have it up there, but I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to give you my thoughts, my analysis on it, and then I want to hear from you in the comments section on it, because I'm sure that you all have a lot to say about Mr. Josh Brown and the police interview. So we're going to get to it all in a second. Stick with me. Before we get started, I want to welcome all of you to Not By Sight News. Yes, blind Christian guy here reporting to you, reminding you as always that we walk by faith, not by sight. For someone like me, that's kind of my only option. If you guys could do me a huge favor, please hit that like button for me. Help me reach my 1,000 likes goal on this video so we can get this information out to a wider audience. It's a quick and easy way to support what I do. Also, share the video across your social media platforms to further increase its visibility, helping us to expose church corruption, call out the wolves in the pulpit, and protect the vulnerable. If you feel like taking it a step further, why not consider supporting us monthly for just $5 a month? It goes a long way, guys. Trust me. Go to patreon.com facebook.com/NotBySiteNews. That link is in the description. We appreciate all of you for helping us out, and I hope that you're all having a blessed day. So this interview with Josh Brown and Mark Daniel, along with Colleyville detective Nick Garcia, took place on March 14th, earlier this year. This is the last one. If you remember, Jonathan, JW, Rebecca's, they had 2 interviews at the end of January. And then you had Sylvia, the cleaning lady, had her interview in early February. And then Josh Brown was the final one. So after all this time, we have heard from all the main players: Jonathan, Susie, Denise Boggs, Debbie Lenhart, right? We've heard from so many different people throughout this process. And now we're hearing from Josh himself, the artist formerly known as Pete, right? Not that we didn't know who it was all along, but because he's being obviously named here in the interview and they're all mentioning him, then, we're all calling him that now, basically, by his real name. So the very beginning of this, it's Josh again. He's setting the stage very well. Again, if I'm grading this guy, man, on your performance, dude, you're getting an A+ from me. Seriously, you're getting an A+. Because he talks about how his life has been ruined the last 4 years. You have no idea, Detective Garcia, what my life has been like, what I have had to go through. He talked about how he's even had threats against his life, which, that's horrible. I've always said, don't do that to people. Don't matter what they've allegedly done. Don't do that to people, okay? And this is actually something that Detective Garcia had brought up, and he actually said that they found whoever this person was. It was somewhere in Africa. And they contacted people over there, and they're going to take care of it. So, I don't doubt that's legit. I don't. That's very, very plausible. This is a crazy world that we live in, okay? So I don't approve of that at all. That's people shouldn't be doing that. But he also talked about how he gets stalked at the gym and people take pictures of him and say all sorts of mean and nasty things to him about what's gone on. And it's just, again, it's completely ruined his life. And as I said, his attorney, Mark Daniels, chiming in. Most of the time, he's sort of leading the charge throughout this entire interview. And Josh was he turned the tears on, guy. He started crying. Garcia seemed very sympathetic towards him and gave him a box of tissues, right? And just about how it's affected his family and how I've been made the villain now in this entire situation. He talked about being the favorite uncle. I used to be the favorite uncle, he says, and now I'm like public enemy number 1 here. So he said the whole thing is about a job. It's all about the fact that Jonathan didn't get what he wanted. He didn't get to become the president of Daystar. So because of that, it was take out Josh. It was blame something on him that he did not do. And he says, how do people get away with that? They've been able to effectively ruin my life without having any consequences of their own at all. Now, I don't know about that. Let me stop right there, because didn't Jonathan and Susie lose their jobs? They lost their jobs over this. You want to tell me that they don't have consequences? They have consequences. Jonathan has basically lost his entire family over this because of this fallout, because he wanted the truth to come out. You guys remember, during all those recordings that came out, and Jonathan in the meeting with trying to make him sign the NDA, right? Tom Callender, right? Jonathan, sign the NDA, son. Just sign it. I love you, but Jonathan, you're being rebellious. You gotta sign the NDA, son. Sign it. Don't just sign it, but shine it too. We saw this guy go through the ringer. The spiritual manipulation from Joni and Jimmy Evans, right? She's the voice of God at Daystar, all this stuff. He got demoted. What was he? The manager of the coffee shop or something like, he was way down on the list. You had, God, what was his name? The Steve Wilhite, right? Steve, remember that video he put out? Hello, my name is Steve Wilhite. I've worked for Daystar for 175 years. Jonathan was always taking these long lunches and going on the golfing trips, right? He never, hardly ever worked at all. I mean, I can't imagine. And he wanted to be the president of Daystar. I mean, that just scares me. I mean, like, he really wanted to try. I think this guy did everything. I don't know him personally. I never met him. But to me, as an outsider, somebody who's covering this, seems like he wanted an actual reconciliation with his family. Wanted his mom to do the right thing. Didn't happen. And because he wouldn't comply, because he wouldn't sign that NDA, they terminated him. They were tracked and followed around. Remember? But Josh is saying in this interview, there's no consequences for them. Dude, he lost his entire, his entire future. His own father, Marcus Lamb, before he passed, said that he wanted his son. Remember with Denise, she talked about it. The order of how it would go, right? He said he called Denise and said, write this down, right? You would have Jonathan in the middle with his wife Susie next to him, and then his sisters, Rachel, Rebecca. But the only name she didn't mention was Josh. Interesting, because that's, again, according to what Denise said, Marcus never mentioned Josh's name. But Josh claims, again, that Jonathan has never received any consequences. Susie hasn't received any consequences at all for these lies and for ruining. Is Josh still getting a paycheck? I'm pretty sure he's still getting paid by Daystar, right? He's still one of their top guys, right? He's got his ventures in Australia, Planet Shakers and all that. Huh. What was Josh Brown followed? Did he have people tracking him? I don't think so. But his life is the one that's ruined, right? Okay. That's what he says. Again, it's all about shaping the narrative, right? Shaping that narrative. He talked about his thoughts on Jonathan JW and Rebecca. He just said out, he goes, I've never gotten along with JW. He goes, I always felt like he was going around behind my back. And this entire Daystar family, they are, wow. And they're all together on ministry now. Now you really get to see some of this because, they throw it to each other all the time in the show and all that. And they act like they're all friendly with one another, but Josh is like, no, JW, I always think he's talking behind my back and everything. I never really got along with him. He said Rebecca he got along with initially, but over time, he says that quickly changed. He says she can turn on you that quick. And he says, well, other than the fact that she's got a nice smile, that's about where it stops. That's about where it stops with her. And then they don't get into, here's the funny thing. They don't even get into the whole, him smooching on the little lamb until like 52 minutes into the interview. And it wasn't even Detective Garcia that brings it up. It's his attorney, Mark Daniel. So if you remember from the first set of interviews, you had JW and Rebecca were talking about, how they saw Josh allegedly on a number of occasions, smooching all over little lamb, right? On the lips and the cheek and the face, everywhere, right? This is something that JW said in that first interview. He's like, it's like right on the mouth. It's like, it's weird. Like, what is it? Like, he's like cringing, right? And stuff. And as Daniel's framing this, Josh is like, no, never. I've never on the lips. Never. And then Daniel said, but it was like on the head sometimes or the cheek. So he admits to that, right? Oh yeah, like he on the head or the cheek, but it was more of a playful. It wasn't like he's, that sort of a thing type of smooching. Even Garcia finally chimes in and he's like, more like a fatherly type of a thing, right? Where you're just wanting to go up to your little and just, because you love him, right? You give him a smooch, right? That, and he says, no, it wasn't. It was playful. It was just playful. What does that mean? Like playful? Like, oh. Okay. So, and he also said that he would never do it at all, any of the smooches anywhere, unless there were adults around, is what he said. So, not denying that he didn't smooch her, but just not on the lips, is what he said. Now, Garcia then chimes in. Now, this was something that we heard in Sylvia's story, when Sylvia mentions a completely different, separate occasion, not at Miramar Beach back in 2021, but earlier than that, I believe, where she was at Joni's house doing dishes, and she sees Josh and the little lamb out in the pool. Now, at this point, she would have been younger. She would have probably been around like maybe 3, something like that. I believe Rebecca said that in the interview. And Sylvia alleges that she sees Josh, and she had the interpreter with her for her interview, but she alleges that she sees Josh smooching all over her. The lips, the face, the head, the neck, right? Stuff an uncle shouldn't be doing. That's just weird. Now, when this was asked of Josh, because the way that Detective Garcia framed it was, what if someone were to have said that you were in a pool with her, kissing her? And he says, in a pool? No, not at all. So, let me pause it right here. Up until we heard about Sylvia, the cleaning lady, she was this is a completely new person that's coming into the story. With as scared as she was to even speak to Detective Garcia, and Rebecca and JW said this because JW had spoken to her, and this was also something that was discussed during their interview. She was afraid of losing her job. She had everything to lose and nothing to gain here. Why would she come forward and speak? With the way that we know that Joni runs the operation over there, why would she even take a chance? What is in it for her? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Sylvia even talked about the fact that she never even used to watch the little. I mean, she was the cleaning lady. They had a whole separate lady who watched over the littles, the nanny or whatever. But she just happened to see this. She's just trying to look out for them. And if she saw something that looked a little weird, yeah, she was going to mention it. What did she have to gain? Nothing. So, someone's a liar then. Either Sylvia's lying or Josh is lying. But according to Josh, Jonathan and Susie are lying. Everybody, there's lies in here, right? Who done it? Who the liar? Who the liars? Who the liars? You tell me. Sylvia is a very interesting addition to the story. Somebody who is not a family member. Coming in, that they're completely neutral. If anything, you'd think that they would have sided towards Joni because of the fact that it's her employer. But she told the truth. And remember what her husband said to her, because she said in her interview, it was her husband that really was the one. Yeah, Rebecca talked to her, but it was her husband who said, come forward. The truth will set you free. Even if it means losing your job. If she wasn't fired before, when her interview came out, maybe she is now. But to be honest with you, she could probably do a lot better than that entire place anyway. And I'm sure somebody will recognize her and probably offer her something very nice. But Josh says, no, not in a pool. Nothing. Nothing in a pool like that at all. Also, throughout the interview, he took a couple of other digs at Rebecca. He said that she became very unreliable to work with, hardly ever on time, and said that when she does show up, people are usually applauding the fact that she actually gets there on time. So he he didn't waste any time or waste a moment really in throwing her under the bus. And remember too, JW and Rebecca say they don't even allow Josh in their home. They're all of them are all split. They're all broken apart over this. Well, we finally got to the beach house incident in Miramar. And this actually was earlier in the interview, so I'm jumping around a little bit. But this is Josh's, and remember, Sylvia's testimony, if you want to call it, her interview with Garcia, matches Susie's account, right? And what was that? That she saw Josh run up the stairs with his 1-year-old in his arms after she told her daughter she can go up to swim. She had to go change. So Susie again and Sylvia, their stories seem to match. Even though Josh said during the interview that Jonathan and Susie's stories have changed a bunch of times. So here was Josh's version of events. He's in the kitchen. He's holding the 1-year-old. Israel, who is Jonathan and Susie's son, said he wanted him to come up, look at the city view, right? I know we've heard this before, but again, we newer people coming in. I'm just bringing this up because this is now Josh is giving us his version of events. So he said, you got the 1-year-old, they're bouncing around. Okay, I'll amuse him. I'll take him up. Israel can show me the room, show me the view, and all of that. So he claims that he did not run up after Little Lamb. Not at all. That he started following Israel and that the girl came up with them. So almost as if they were all walking up together. But it wasn't like he sprinted up after her, which is again what Susie and Sylvia have said. So he says we get up to the room. Josh is over with Israel. He's got his 1-year-old in his hand. They're looking out the window. He said that, and his attorney again is the one who's kind of leading this, was saying, okay, so you never even saw her. You didn't see her change. No, nothing. He says nothing. He goes, I don't even know if she did change, to be honest with you. I wasn't even paying any attention. I was looking out the window, right? City view, beach view thing. Okay. Didn't even really know she was even in the room. And then he talks about Jonathan comes up there all of a sudden. He's screaming. He's yelling. He's a crazy person. This guy is completely lost his mind, right? I mean, he's just going off. He just doesn't understand what happened. He says, what did I do? What did I do? He doesn't even understand it. So, and they talked, Israel says he doesn't even remember what happened in the room that day and all. But I'll tie this in here and then I'll keep going. But Israel has said that he does vividly remember having the sleepovers at Josh and Rachel's home. And this is something that also in the interview, Josh completely denied. He says at no point did his, that being Israel and the little lamb, ever spend the night at their house. Never. He even said, I've never even spent the night at their house. He says, I do remember Susie talking about how, oh yeah, we should have them go over there and spend the night. But he claims it never happened. Israel says it did. Who's lying? Who's telling the truth? You let me know. So Jonathan is screaming, going through all this. And then that leads to obviously to the meeting. If you remember, Marcus, and this is where they decided that Josh was going to be the villain in this story. Eventually he gets to the part where Denise Boggs comes into the picture. Marcus and Joni, right? Longtime friend of the family. Denise was their, the pastoral counselor. Debbie Lenhart was the licensed forensic counselor. So they made arrangements, right? First, Debbie's talking to them, or I should say Denise. Denise is talking to them at first in their office. Jonathan and Susie are there. And then you have Josh and Rachel. They come in. And in her office, this is something that Josh said that was interesting. They get there and Josh says that little lamb starts to, because Denise says she's going to go check on the kids. And Josh says that the little lamb starts to change in front of her. And Josh says to Denise, oh, see, now you're going to need counseling, Denise, over the same thing that you're accusing me of. And then he says that, well, obviously there's a boundary issue here with the parents, and that's, something that'll have to get itself worked out. And I'll get back, because there was this whole thing about reconciliation, and I'll get to that. But if you guys remember, they went out to North Carolina to meet with Debbie Lenhart, and Josh, this is going back to the whole victim thing. He talked about how difficult this was for him. He talked about, and I didn't need to hear this part, Rachel was doing pumping, and it was really difficult for her to have to do that. The questioning, the processing, which he said was just so taxing on him. It was so traumatic for him to have to go through, and he claims that she didn't really have anything to go on, and that he wanted it in writing. He kept saying, I want it in writing that I'm good. And by the time that he got back with Denise, she said, well, you'd have to go back to Debbie again and get it in writing. And if you remember, what was said in their interviews that they gave, Denise and Debbie, was that really Josh didn't answer any of the questions, that it was Rachel who was answering the majority of the questions. And there was all that talk about, oh, you need to clear me. And Denise would keep saying to Josh, well, you got it. Or Debbie's the only one who can do it. You gotta talk to her. You gotta go back there. But he didn't want to go back and do the interviews again. All that, they get the information that Josh has been cleared. Right, Marcus, remember? Oh, he's been cleared. But that wasn't really the case. If you remember, he was never cleared. That was a lie. He never actually went back. And this reconciliation, this was also very interesting, because as Josh was talking, he talks about how Denise tried to facilitate this reconciliation between both Jonathan and Susie and Rachel and Josh. And that Jonathan actually apologizes to Josh and says, I'm sorry that I put you through this. And he's even crying. Josh says he's crying, and he asks him, can I give you a hug? And then he just gets up and gives him a hug, and he's sobbing on his shoulder, and he's saying, can I pray for you? And he prays over Josh. And Josh said, in that moment, I knew that this isn't over yet, that it was not going to be over. This wasn't going to be the reconciliation that everybody talked about. Now, of course, that reconciliation was, if you remember, the conversation that Marcus had with JW and Jonathan. Josh has been cleared, so this whole thing needs to be dropped. You guys want to keep being a part of Daystar, you got to drop this whole thing, and you have to move on, okay? And we know that would later be debunked by Debbie and by Denise when they gave their interviews. He was never cleared of anything. So Josh then gets into the whole Doug Weiss situation and how Denise was orchestrating this operation to get, him and Rachel and JW, Rebecca, all of them together, Jonathan, Susie, so they could talk Joni out of this marriage to Doug Weiss. By the way, Josh said he's a big fan of Doug Weiss. He even calls him Dr. Doug during the interview because he just loves this guy so much. He goes, oh, by the way, Dr. Doug is great. Oh, he's real great. Yeah, he's a gem, isn't he? So he said he had to actually apologize to Joni for going along with this and say that, you can marry. He actually said you can marry whatever you want. Is that an indication that Dr. Doug is not actually human? Like, he's a whatever. You can marry whatever you want, not whoever you want, whatever. Right? We've all wondered about him anyway. Like, what is this guy? Is he human? Is he not? I don't know. So the whole rest of it again was just, he gives him Detective Garcia gives him the car, his car. Okay, you got anything you can call me. But it was, again, very well done. And there's a little bit more to it. Again, I wasn't going to go over the entire, I want to hit the main points, and you guys can watch the full hour and 17 minutes on the Roy's Report if you would like to. But a masterful job of creating your narrative and making yourself be the victim. That's why I wanted to point out here, when he says that these people haven't had any consequence, they lost everything at Daystar. Risking it all for what they believe in order to do what? To protect their daughter. Now, of course, 2 months after the interview in May of 2025, the case was closed. But we know that it can be reopened at any point, as long as the little lamb decides to speak. If that happens, then this case can be reopened. When that happens, we don't know. That could be any time. Any time at all. But Sylvia's testimony here is very important. Very important going forward. Because it again presents a completely new element to this entire case. Somebody who was not a family member, who witnessed something, not only matches Susie's account of events in the beach house in Miramar, but talked about that separate occasion that she saw Josh and the little lamb in the pool with him allegedly doing all the smooching and stuff all over the place. Also, I just want to say this, because we've talked about it before. The last two in the room with Marcus when he passed away, Josh and Joni. I've always had, and make of that what you will, I'm not saying anything, but I've always wondered, and I'm sure some of you have as well, I've always wondered why Joni would side with her son-in-law, Josh Brown, if what is alleged here to have happened to the little lamb is true. He could have easily been fired, right? Just completely booted off the network. They would have moved on and it would have been fine. This happens in ministries all the time. I talk about it, right? A pastor does this, right? He's booted out of the ministry. Or there's a third-party investigation. Maybe he gets arrested. The ministry moves on. Sometimes they move on completely unscathed. Maybe they lose a few members. But why the desperation to hold on to him? Why the desperation? Was he that valuable to Daystar? Could they not have survived without Josh? Of course they could have survived without him. Survived before him. Before he ever came into the family. But why just the solid defense of him? The praise for Doug Weiss. See, there's a lot, I believe, in my opinion, behind the scenes yet that we don't even know. But God does. God knows. He sees it. Now, whether or not it ever comes to light, we don't know. We hope that it will. Let's just say it doesn't. They all have to go before God and give an account. Whatever wasn't revealed on earth will be revealed when they go before the Lord. In my opinion, it'll be played right in front of them. Right there. Why does somebody throw their own son under the bus, fire them, try to make their life miserable, all while defending somebody who'd only been in the family at that point for about 5 years or so? There's something else here that we're not seeing yet. We have our thoughts on it, but there's something else here. Where does this go from here? We'll have to wait and see. But I appreciate you all for watching today. I do want to get your thoughts here in the comments section. What do you think about the Josh Brown interview with Detective Nick Garcia? What do you think about his attorney Daniel's involvement in this? Do you think that he made, again, a masterful performance here in shaping his narrative of events? Do you believe that he helped himself? Or do you believe that he hurt himself? I'll also say this too, that he talked about how a lot of people come up to him and say that they feel sorry for him and, oh, Josh, why is this happening to you? You know, we love you and all that. I don't doubt that either. I want you to understand, I don't doubt that. There are a lot of people, again, as I said earlier, that they don't read the articles, right? They're not out there looking at the Roy's report. They don't know. They assume that whatever narrative that the big Christian TV network is telling them is true. I don't deny that. People say that to him. But these are people that either they're living under a rock. They only watch Daystar all day. They're not willing to use discernment and look into these situations seriously. That's the problem right now in the church, as I talk about all the time. People are too quick to trust the title. Trust because it's a pastor, or it's Daystar, or it's TBN, or it's Kenneth Copeland, it's Jesse Duplantis, it's Joni Lamb, it's Robert Morris. Pick any big name you want. You can't have blind trust in a title. You got to look at the fruit. You'll know them by their fruit. So you guys chime in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget our 1,000 likes goal. Hit that like button for me. It's a quick and easy way to support what I do. Gets the information out to a wider audience. Also, share the video across your social media platforms to further increase its visibility. If you really enjoy and appreciate the work of Not By Sight News and you would like to see this great work continue, would you consider making a generous donation to support and fund our operation here? As I always say, not here to promote to you a false prosperity gospel. We just ask if you enjoy, appreciate the work being done, you find it important, you would think about giving to us. You'd also be helping us out in what has been a very tumultuous year for myself and my wife with their various health issues, including suffering a stroke, a clotting disorder, lupus, and Bell's palsy. It's been a very rough go. We're powering through as best we can. I can tell you, though, the medical bills are not cheap. So if you feel led by the Lord to help us, or you just enjoy the work we're doing overall and would like to bless us because of that, we have multiple ways to do so. One of those is by going to our GoFundMe, that link down below in the description. You can also, as I mentioned earlier, become a monthly partner with us. Join our Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Patreon.com/NotBySightNews. That link also in the description. Finally, you can just hit the super thanks button on the YT video here to make a contribution that way. It all helps us out. It's all appreciated, and we can't do it without you. What I want to do right now, something I do on all these videos, let's end this video on hope. It's part of my ministry outreach. This is an altar call. I've been doing this on my videos since 2016. No matter what it is I am discussing in the church, we always want to give people the opportunity to receive Christ as Savior. That being said, anybody watching now, if you are someone who has not yet received Jesus as Lord and Savior, you would like to do so, I want to lead you in a prayer to do that right now. This is a prayer you could do in your own words, but I will give you the steps you need to bring it before the Lord today. First thing you want to do right off the top, acknowledge you are a sinner. That is something that we all are. The good news is that God gave his only son, Jesus Christ, to die on that cross for the sins of all the world, as he died and rose again for you and me. He paid the cost. What you have to do is repent of your sin. That means to turn from sin, not just to say you're sorry and jump back to your old ways, but to actually turn from sin, which are those lifestyles, patterns, habits, behaviors, things in your life that go against the word of God. If you humbly go before the Lord, though, and ask him to forgive you, he'll wipe your sin away. Bible says he doesn't remember it any longer. And then you invite Jesus into your life to be your Lord and Savior. When you do that, you become born again, a child of God. You will have eternal life. Trust me when I tell you there is no greater decision that you will ever make than the one you do, to give your life to Christ. And I pray you make that decision today. Again, more info down below. Thank you all again so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be back with more. You guys take care. Please be safe out there. God bless each and every single one of you. And I'll talk with you soon.